Welcome to Gatefeed TV. We're here to discuss the just recently concluded Democracy Day, when President Buhari named the National Stadium in Abuja after the late MK Abiola. I'm Dr. Ikenna Webo, and my left is
Emeka Ugo Anyang.
Nkem Okogo.
Munachiso AJG.
Oh, Nkem, as we are talking, do you think we are truly democratic?
Well, I would say that 20 years it seems like a long time, but really it's a short time if you compare that to the democracies of other developed countries. What is a success? What I would categorize as a success for me is that we've been able to sustain this democracy for 20 years uninterrupted. We've had 4 election cycles, and we've been able to transition power from one government, one democratic government to another. So that to me is a success. However, I would say that in terms of democratic growth, there is still so much to be done. It leaves very little to be desired. We have successfully passed some various acts that show some kind of that shows the spirit of democracy. However, in its implementation, we do not see that level of passion or enthusiasm in ensuring that these acts are actually enforced and carried out. So I give an example. We have the Freedom of Information Act, but every now and again, we see journalists, bloggers, human rights defenders, media houses being raided by security operatives, and no one is held accountable. So what this does is it constantly intimidates the press. And in a country where there is no freedom of expression or where the press is gagged, democracy is threatened. So I would say that yes, we've made some progress, but there is still so much to be done. And we as citizens, now is not the time for us to rest on our laurels and say, oh, we have democracy running. It's time for us to actively engage the government, demand for accountability, and put their feet to the fire to ensure that we get the true dividends of democracy.
Muna, did you hear?
Yes.
So, a question before you speak. Do you think that the reason why democracy is not that well implemented here is because of the attitude of the ruler? I mean, the president of ours was a military ruler and is back to being a civilian. Do you think he has still kept some of his military tendencies in administering the nation?
Well, in terms of the 20 years of democracy, I feel that we've actually gone a long way. People tend to downplay the progress that Nigeria has actually made in the past 20 years. And I tend to look at situations based on the lives of individuals within the country as a collective. I grew up in a house where my dad started out running a chemist shop, and now in Lagos, in Orile in Lagos. That's how we grew up in a one-room apartment. But the 20 years down the line, we live in Abuja. He does major jobs, and we've been able to study across different countries across the world. I feel if Nigeria created that opportunity for him and for my family, and for so many other families,
A lot earlier.
This past 20 years have been really amazing. People have been able to see the opportunities and been able to explore their God-given talent within Nigeria. I know we still have a long way to go, but we need to appreciate what we have. In the past administration, and obviously for the fact that they've won the election for the second time, I feel that there are actually people that believe that they're doing things right to a certain extent. Because if they won the election, that means people believe in what they're trying to do. I think the growth has not been what we require and what we expected, but we have to actually appreciate them for the gains that they have had in the past few years. Many of the bills that Nkem mentioned were actually passed in the last administration. So, like the Not Too Young to Run bill, things like that show that the country is looking forward to actually engaging the youth within the democratic space. And we've seen that we've had in different state houses of assemblies, young people actually taking up the mantle to actually lead. So I feel that if we keep on, believing in ourselves, and as Nkem said, not resting on our laurels, we can actually get the democracy that we need.
Let's talk about the Fourth Republic. Fourth Republic is the first term of President Olusegun Obasanjo, 1990 to 2003, where after a long military rulership, we came back to civilian. What do you think was the relationship between the Senate, as that's the legislative, and the executive at that time? I remember in 2003, the Southeast was zoned. The Senate was zoned to the South, and we had three senators.
We had three senators.
We had Evans and late. We had late Shubo Akadibo, and we had Pius Ayimbayim.
Yeah, so, I think the legislative arm of government is relatively the youngest arm. Because during the military time, we really did not have an active legislative arm. Yes, we did, but it wasn't vibrant. In 1990, in the annulled 1993 elections, they came into power, but it was only for a short time until they were disbanded. So they weren't given a chance to really make legislative laws and checkmate the president or the military head of state at the time. So I think that explained the reason why from 1999 to 2003 there was that chaos. So they had three leaders of the Senate. But then subsequently we had some kind of stability in the National Assembly. And then leading on to the 8th Senate, where we had
Bukola
Saraki and Dogara, and that tumultuous relationship between the legislative arm and the executive. Personally, I would say that some people might consider it a bad patch, but I think that it was a good time for democracy, because what happened was the legislative arm was not a rubber stamp to the executive. Yes. So there was that constant check and balance. It's possible that in this time there's been some lessons learned. People have understood certain things. There might be some kind of synergy between the legislators and the executive. So that's a good thing. But that's also cause to worry, because you don't want a situation where the legislative arm is really just an extension of the executive.
Mona, I recall vividly during the Fourth Republic too, there was a case of Toronto certificate, if you remember. There was his first speaker, his name was Salisu. I think his surname was Buhari, but he was later impeached, and Umar Gali Naba from Kano was elected Speaker of the House. That was then in 2004. It was the time of people like Bello Masari, who's now the governor of Katsina, the home state of the president. But there are these issues that we want to talk about, democratic ideals. If you look at the United States of America now, you have the two main parties. You have the Republicans and you have the Democrats. Then you also have the Independents. But let's look at the two major parties. What's your opinion on 20 years on the issue of the campaign? The campaign from one party to the other. How has it affected our democratic progress? I'll give an example. The Speaker, the Senate President, for example, and the Speaker in the 8th Republic decamped in between their tenures to the opposition party. Do you think they should have stepped aside, or?
I believe that political parties should be driven by values. And by that, it means that if you believe in a certain type of governance, you need to band with the people that believe in the same way. In the US, the Democrats are more socialist, while the Republicans are more capitalist. So it's important that in Nigeria we need to be able to see parties up for what they stand for. And at the moment, parties are just platforms for people to reach the goals that they want. So if your ideals and your goals do not fit within that particular party system at the time, people tend to decamp for, majorly for the reasons of winning the next elections.
So it's all personal?
I think it's a personal thing for all the senators involved.
She earlier said something about the FOI Act and no punishment. She gave examples. You can write a letter to a minister, to an MDA, and the MDA doesn't respond, and there's no punishment. So this is what she's talking about strengthen democratic systems. I personally don't think that you should wake up and decamp for any reason, because the party is a vehicle. I mean, if you stop down from your vehicle, you will not get to your destination. So I personally feel that if you decamp from your party, you should leave your seats, because most people in Nigeria vote based on parties.
Yes.
They call it in the north, they call it the sack effect. So if you're in a certain party, it's most probably that you're going to win, because everybody will vote from top to bottom. The FOI actually talked about people write letters to MDAs and they are not responding to, and everything goes on well. So those are issues that we need to look at in our democratic system to know how we can strengthen. Before we continue, I'd like to ask you guys a personal question. We are talking about democracy. Did you vote? Did you vote? Did you vote?
In the last elections, I voted for the first time.
Oh. Why weren't you voting previously?
For a variety of reasons. Before I was actually of voting age, I left Nigeria for a couple of years, and I just returned just right in time for the elections. So I felt that it was an important step. Under normal circumstances, I might not have voted, but the citizens' engagement based on the activities of civil society organizations that actually went around and engaged people on the importance of voting and understanding that your vote counts and it's a part of building your future. If you don't vote, you vote for the country to fail. So it created the activities of CSOs and the way citizens engage within themselves on social media and offline made it paramount for people to vote in the last election.
Well, actually, the controversy that happened during the last election.
Where did you vote first of all?
Can I say it on air? I did not vote.
Okay.
Well, I did not
So
vote
you shouldn't
because
complain. You shouldn't complain.
Not wait. I did not vote because I had my voter's card.
Yes.
So last year I got this. I was fully in Lagos, so I had to move my voters my polling this thing from where it was in Abuja here to Lagos, and it was hell. I knew I had to take off from work 4 times. 4 times. The last one I had to leave my house as early as 3 a.m. to go to the polling thing, which was in Lekki Phase 1, one of the polling registration centers in Lekki Phase 1.
The racks, eh?
Yes, and the crowd there was too much. In fact, it got to an extent where I had to, tip and then to get things done quickly.
Big stress. So, did you vote in Kenya?
Of course I did vote.
Did you vote in Abuja here?
I voted here in Abuja. And just to say that it's really sad. My younger sister had similar experience to what you did. They had gone to the registration point severally and were unable to get. She has the temporary voter's card,
yes.
and she was unable to get the PVC. People were tipping.
In Abuja, yeah?
Yes, in Abuja, in town.
That's surprising, because the INEC chair and the director of voters education, Festus Okoye, yeah, that's his name, came on TV before the election and said almost everybody had.
It's different from what they say on TV.
What is happening? The argument then was that
she blatantly refused to give money to get her PVC. And it just goes back to the reward system in Nigeria. For the people who tipped, they did get their PVC. And she who decided to do the right thing was disenfranchised from expressing her fundamental human rights. So there's just so much to be done. While we say progress has been made, there's a long way ahead.
The 2019 elections were, personally, I'll score INEC 25%. They performed poorly. I'll go to my home state.
25 is even too.
25%. I'll go to my home state. How well did they do? I know my local. I'm from Njikoka. I know my ward. There are 2 wards in my town, Northia, and by that was of ground. Election material didn't come out till 11. This is a town close to the state capital. It's like 10 minutes drive. Did you believe that the INEC chairman should you believe your sister should have been compensated, or Nigerians should have been compensated for that cancellation?
Well, beyond, of course, it was quite a shame that we had to cancel the election the way we did. But what was troubling for me was the high rate of violence recorded in the last election.
Exactly.
Unprecedented.
Rivers.
The numbers of deaths, the numbers of people injured, voter intimidation by state and non-state actors, it was unprecedented. It's like nothing we've seen before.
Even we had incidents where the former governor of Imo State, the INEC officer in that state, declared him winner under duress. And after the whole incident that happened, the court demanded INEC to give him his return.
Yes.
So that means what we're not trying to say now is the staffs of INEC are not safe.
I mean, it goes back to the point earlier made about strengthening the institutions. We need to strengthen our laws. I mean, the former INEC chairman came out with, he said we should have what they call the electoral tribunal. It should be a separate court. I mean, there should be an election tribunal court on its own, not usually the election petition tribunal and the appeal court. And there should be a court. There should be an electoral offense. If you commit election offense, they should take you to that court. What is meted out to bad behavior? Are we compensating? What happened to the INEC rec? What has happened to the INEC, to Rochas Okorocha? He's now a senator. So are you saying, like, I agree with you, are you saying that if you hold the INEC returning officers at gun point,
case of the end justifies
that's the means, and which is not fair. Yeah, which is not fair.
To get there.
Which is not fair. So let's continue. We'll talk about the new government. I mean, the president gave an okay speech on June 12th. I gave it to him. He tried, and he named two of the big decisions he said. To me, he named the National Stadium after MKO, and he said something, I don't know. It's funny because over the years, his party and his ministers and his government officials have been denying those statements. Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world. 89-something Nigerians are in poverty, extreme poverty.
Now, so you really
and the president now comes out to say that he's promised to take 100 million Nigerians out of poverty. What do you have to say about that?
I think it's a very vague statement when there's no actual policies in place to actually defend that kind of statement. For you to say you're just taking 100 million Nigerians out of
He did say that though. He did say that though.
Yeah, I mean, what you say.
We can point out to certain programs of that. They have the homegrown feed, the NSIP, social intervention funds.
How many people have been beneficiaries for that?
Well, I mean, not a lot, but they hope to inculcate more people. Empower has how many volunteers now? 500,000. I don't know the numbers.
But I think that interventions like this are not sufficient. You do not do socialist interventions.
Sufficient or not sustainable? Which one?
Both. They are not efficient. They are not sustainable. Socialist interventions do not create economic growth.
Okay.
You must create a system that is economic driven. Don't give me handouts. I don't want you to give me 5,000 naira every month. Create an enabling environment for me to start up a business and thrive. That's all I'm saying. But beyond that, for me personally, this government has been one that has shown no interest in diversity, both in its representation of women in power, in women in
the president didn't promise you that, but it's okay. He did sign the Not Too Young to Run bill, though.
Well, but I really would want to see quite a significant number of young people in his cabinet. I want to see a fair representation of women in prominent positions, both as ministers and
there are some women in prominent positions.
But they are not sufficient.
There's Stasha Nikazo.
They are not sufficient. I can count with my hand
the representation
how many of them. It's very lopsided. I also would want to see an even spread of these positions across people from the Federation. Do not concentrate positions from one particular region. Only through such actions would we believe that this country belongs to us.
So you want the president to
be
more... You said he's going to try to be more, to bring unity to the country.
Yes,
you noticed
because
that
in
maybe
the last 4 years, we have suffered the fear of the other tribe. What has happened, I grew up in Abuja and I have friends from the north. I have friends from all over Nigeria. Yes. But in the last 4 years, there's certain conversations that you can't have because the polity is so heated. Everything has been drawn along along the lines of ethnicity and religion.
Yes.
And it boils down to leadership.
Yes, I agree with you.
So I really I expect so much from the president in the next 4 years. I mean, a leopard does not change the skin, but I am not expecting him to begin to learn old tricks now, but I hope that he will be more open and will be willing to do better in this 4 years so that he can bequeath to us a country that we would all be proud of. And even he himself, considering he's an elderly person, will be proud of.
On our parting shot, let's look at the National Assembly. I mean, everybody agrees that the Bukola Saraki-led 8th Assembly was efficient. I'd like to say that one. They performed, in my opinion, they performed fairly credibly.
Yeah.
You know, I would look at certain bills they passed. The last bill I worked on, tobacco control, VAP,
Not young to run.
not too young to run. I mean, he spearheaded a team. Well, not him, but he had an anchor. He had a team lead in the office. He did well. I mean, citizens engagement, everything. And I mean, he's sound. I mean, maybe from his upbringing. He's a medical doctor, went to King's College, had a father that was a Senate leader. So there was this pedigree that he had. What do you expect from the new assembly? I mean, do you think that they will perform better than the last one?
With the person like...
Before, hold on, I just want to say, you know, the surprising thing that the government blamed the Bukola Saraki for various failures that they had. I mean, that's surprising but that's by the way.
So now
they have everybody,
everybody.
so they have no. So what do you think?
Well,
Party changes
I would want to give them the benefit of the doubt and just see what they can do. But just going by your introduction to this, you said the Bukola Saraki and the Dogara-led National Assembly performed really well. And what was different? They weren't endorsed by the executive, and so to some extent they had their voice.
They had to prove themselves.
They had to prove themselves to be worthy of that position. In this case, we have a group of people that are really the first child, you know, the preferred children of the executive. So let's see what's happened. But what I know is that human rights defenders, human rights lawyers have released several publications to question the emergence of people like the Deputy Senate President and also the Speaker of the House of Assembly for obvious reasons, for, you know, their alleged corruption allegations and then misdemeanors. So what this does is it casts a morality dent on the National Assembly. It puts that morality burden on them, and I just hope that it's not too heavy for them, so their credibility is not lost as they go into legislating.
So Muna, finally, separation of powers. The executive, legislature, and judiciary remains the true fulcrum of democracy in Nigeria, democratic government in Nigeria. Do you feel the National Assembly is going to be independent? You see what happened in the judiciary, right?
Yes.
So do you feel the National Assembly is going to be independent?
I feel with the emergence of people that are of the same party should be able to drive some sort of synergy, but it all depends on what the people in the important places want to do for the people. Are they willing to listen to the voices of the people? In the last dispensation, we had conversations as youth groups. We had conversations with the Senate President on different matters.
Did he impress you?
Most specifically on youth employment and youth development. I saw that the Senate President, the past Senate President, Bukola Saraki, was actually interested in the development of the youth. So it will be down to the current leadership of the Senate to actually bring out programs and even, you know, have stakeholder sessions with the people, with the citizens, engage with the citizens and actually find out what it is that they require of them, and actually build a country with all the working parts, you know, playing their own parts. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to us on this show. I'll end by saying the president has been re-elected. We hope he does the best for the country.